Man, this is Deion Dawkins, man, and you're listening to The Scoop on OurScoop.com. You already know.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to The Scoop, OurScoop.com's podcast. This is Season 7, Episode 14. I'm John DiCarlo, and Kyle Gauss and Dante Colonelli are with me once again. Sam Cohn will be with us a little bit later on to talk to you about Temple's season opener against Maryland Eastern Shore, talking hoops. Got some hoops mailbag questions. Kyle, Dante, what's going on?
Been a tumultuous week in Temple athletics is what I'll say. Yeah. Tumultuous month, season, quarter, fiscal year.
It's a lot. It's covering a lot.
Yeah. Things better than that. Things have been good. The weather's been nice.
Yeah.
But it's been an interesting time.
Warmed up over the past couple of days.
Yeah, I don't like that. I want consistency. Once it decides to be cold, I want it to be cold.
Yeah, I want it to be
I hate this random it's November 15th and it's 71 degrees today.
Yeah, I don't like that.
No, give me the cold. Give me the briskness in the air.
Some that smell of burning wood outside. Some fireplace weather. Some soup weather.
I keep debating whether or not I'm going to get a fire pit for the backyard. I'm debating whether or not I want to do a wood like I did in my old house, but then that's more work. Or do I just get a gas fire pit? It's we're at a fork. We're at a split in the season. Fork in the season. Does Kyle go propane? Does Kyle go wood?
Do a cost-benefit analysis later on.
Well, cost-benefit-wise, it's wood. It's just a piece of metal. You burn the wood.
Well, I mean, is it? Do you go propane once every? How often are you buying propane versus buying cords of wood?
Cinch.com. You get the propane delivered directly to your house. First cinch is only $10. Go to cinch.com/OurScoop.com presents the podcast called The Scoop. Tell them I sent you. Cinch is a great product. They just deliver the propane to your house. You don't got to go to a Walgreens in North Philly anymore to get propane.
Well, they're not sponsors on The Scoop, but they just got a free ad.
I've said that in the past that we should just make up sponsors. Sid Booker's Shrimp Place at Broad and whatever. It's sponsored.
People go there and they're like, yo, man, I showed up. There was not a shrimp place. They're like, oh.
Yeah, there is. Sid Booker's Shrimp. Have you even been there? You would recognize it. Sid Booker's Shrimp is
it's a real place.
It's a real place.
Oh, I thought you were making up a place. I thought you were.
No, it's a real place.
When you said make up sponsors, I thought you were making up the thing.
No, I meant to make up that they sponsor us. It's Broad and Cortland. As you drive by it, you'll see this double decker pink building, and they just they have these gigantic we endorse this guy for councilman, and underneath they'll be shrimp basket special $4.99. It's phenomenal.
I wish I had a shrimp basket right now.
I'd kill for yeah.
If you could be eating one type of food right now as we do this podcast, what would you want?
John, we're grown men. You can just go get whatever food you want. I don't think I understand the question. A genie has to come to you to grant the idea for you to have popcorn.
A minor wish, Kyle. I'm going to drop a little more.
A minor wish genie.
Yes.
It's a genie that can do anything. He can do anything you want as long as it's underneath a monetary value of $19.99.
Imagine the minor wish genie. How you doing? I hope as long as you're not too busy. I have a few.
Yeah, look, man. My turnaround time is 7 to 10 business days. So I hope you only. If you need more, I would suggest Amazon. But otherwise, I'm your guy.
Dante's looking at us like we're nuts. What would you want? What would you want minor wish genie to bring you right now?
Oh, I could go for some really good fries right now. I feel I haven't had really good fries in a long time.
I probably haven't either, actually. Now that I'm thinking about it.
Yeah.
Because this might be a sin. Last time I went to Chick-fil-A, I got soup instead of fries.
That is a sin. I mean, I know that this is the Al Soup podcast, but that's a little bit too much.
Who gets soup?
I'm watching my figure. I kind of ballooned up 5 or 6 pounds, so I'm trying to,
watch my figure.
Tighten it off. Step on a scale, subtract 30 pounds from it.
And then weigh that.
Yeah.
Who gets it? If I ordered soup.
It was pretty good. It was a chicken tortilla, so it was a chicken incorporated soup. There was chicken in it.
If we were on a road trip
If
And
we were on a
we'll
road
go
trip,
drive-
you would have gotten like, oh wow, Chick-fil-A has clam chowder, and you would have gotten clam chowder, and then you would have blown your pants out like 45 minutes later, and then all of a sudden, I'm an hour behind my ETA of showing up at the Temple Townsend game because somebody had to pull over at the random Maryland house place to just destroy a toilet, and now here we are. There's a Bojangles there. Of course, I'm going to go to the Bojangles, and now the whole trip's derailed. Anything else you'd like to talk about?
I'm guessing this is a real thing that happened.
No,
I mean, it's like probably a combination of 45 different stories. I have a fantastic one, which John will get mad at me if I tell him the scoop. So
we'll tell it off the scoop. Tell it off the scoop. All right. So Kyle would have Chick-fil-A soup and Dante would have fries.
No, we can just get into Temple Athletics at this point.
Yeah. Anyway, as Kyle said, it's been a not good stretch. Just keeps getting worse for this Temple football program. The Owls, unless you're living under a rock, you know that they lost 45-3 at East Carolina on Saturday. Once again, they weren't competitive. Bad football game. And now Temple has lost Jaden Blue to the transfer portal. He announced today, we're recording on a Wednesday, so announced on Twitter, announced on Instagram. So they will be without Jaden Blue for the rest of the season and forever, I suppose. So we'll talk about that. Well, I mean, Dante, is he coming back?
I don't know.
No,
what if they hire Baden Blue as the next coach and his son comes back? Like,
it was just a funny way of phrasing it. It's like they will be without
him for the week, the season,
forever. But I mean, we'll start with that. Get into the ugliness that was the ECU loss. We'll preview this game they have coming up on Saturday against Houston, which certainly looks like another loss. We'll play a quote for you from Kobe Wilson from media availability from this week, and some stuff to come up there, of course, with football. But I mean, we're not surprised about Jaden Blue hitting the transfer portal. Certainly had not played well, and his play has regressed, whether that's due to himself, due to coaching, due to the offense, all sorts of stuff. I think the most significant thing about it is that, and we've talked about this, I think, before, Jaden Blue was one of the guys who was initially singing the praises of this staff. He left the team, quit the team when Jeff Collins was around. And so when Rod Carey and his staff got to Temple 3 seasons ago, they essentially re-recruited Jaden to join the team, and he's always been really positive about the staff. And in his message today, he was classy and thanked the coaches, thanked the community, and all sorts of stuff. But never a good thing when, even statistically, even though he hasn't been playing well and he had a drop. I mean, there was a pass that was thrown right at his hands last Saturday, so he has regressed. But here's a guy that's leaving again, and a guy who really had been endorsing this current staff, but is choosing to leave with a few games left on the schedule. So I know it sounds like the obvious question, but what do you guys make of this?
I'll preface this by saying I think this is going to be Jaden Blue's last season at Temple, regardless of what happened. I think him coming back this season was quote unquote a win because it happened with Dwan Mathis coming here, and that kind of calmed the waters a bit enough for him to come back. I think ideally he would have liked to have a 1,400-yard season and declared for the NFL and been a 3rd, 4th, 5th round pick. It didn't happen that way. It didn't happen the way, whether it's via scheme, whether it's via him to be, quite frankly, looking like he's checked out at times, like whatever it might be, it didn't happen that way. I think this is going to serve as fodder to the people that are being like, well, why haven't you fired Rod Carey yet? Because while it might not apply to Jaden Blue's situation, since like I said, I think he was gone either way, it could apply to other people's situation. The longer this kind of stretches out without there being resolution one way or the other, whether that's an affirmation of a reaffirmation of Rod Carey's job status or a 11 a.m. on a Sunday news dump of saying, hey, Temple's part way with Rod Carey, the longer this stretches out, the more likely you're going to get players that have to kind of make decisions with incomplete data. So not a good look for Temple. I don't think football-wise it really matters that much for this season. I don't think it mattered that Jaden Blue was going to play this weekend or not, unless all of a sudden he can play defensive line and actually get pressure. I don't think it's going to matter because I think Houston's going to drop 55, 60 on them. So I don't think it matters from an actual football perspective. From an optics perspective, it's never great when somebody's 4 catches away from becoming your all-time leading catcher.
Yeah.
And it just decides to leave. Like he could just played one more game, gotten the record and left. And instead it just became, I'm out.
Dante?
Yeah, I agree with everything Kyle just said. This was not remotely surprising. And I think that a lot of people have like been quote tweeting the tweet that was sent out that he is transferring, being like, fire Rod Kerry, and this is all the coaching staff's fault. Not only did Jaden Blue like sing their praises, but like they've continued to feed him targets this season when he's been like objectively bad. I don't really know how to better phrase that. Like, he has not been good. He has not produced explosive plays. He's dropped easy passes. He's been tackled around the line of scrimmage like a ton on those jet sweep passes that they like to do. Like, he just hasn't been able to create for himself. And John and I were talking about this earlier, and like every time I saw Jaden Blue get a jet sweep pass, my immediate thought was, why is that not Ahmad Anderson? It's just like, that was like my immediate thought. So from a football perspective, like, I don't know if you can really hate on the coaching staff for this one specifically. I think Jaden was either going to go to the NFL or transfer anyway. I don't think that this is, really an indictment on Kerry and that staff. I just think that sometimes things just aren't clicking for guys in certain places. They tried. They fed him targets. He's third on the team in catches, and he's averaging I think it's 6.75 yards per catch, which is like dreadful.
It's actually the team's leading receiver, right?
In catches, yeah.
In receptions, yeah. And they're feeding him touches and he's not producing. So I don't even know if it's fair to, even blame the coaching staff for this at all. I don't know what else they possibly could have done. It's not like he was benched. I mean, it even took them way too long to remove him as a punt returner for Ahmad Anderson too. They let him, stay back there a couple of weeks, even though it was very clear that was not his thing. He shouldn't be back there. So, Jaden had a good year here where he went over 1,000 yards, and he was productive in a short season last year, even if he regressed a little bit last year too. So I don't think this was a surprise, and I don't think it's as big of a deal as maybe everyone is making it. I think we'll probably see players leave regardless of what happens with the coaching staff this year. So
yeah, I've been kind of just striking my brain even before this about what happened to Jaden Blue. I think a lot of it honestly is you went from a situation in 2019 where you had Brandon Mack and Isaiah Wright and Kenny Yeboah, and you, not to discredit the fact that he was Temple's first 1,000-yard receiver, he was opposing defensive coordinator's third or fourth problem on that offense. Now, fast forward 2 more years, you have Randall Jones, who's been in and out of the injury tent, missed 2.5 games this year. He's better when Randall Jones plays. You can see it's easier to get him the ball when Randall Jones plays, but he has just not been able to kind of take over. Well, now I'm facing schemes that are meant to take me out of this game when it comes to passing. So I just don't think he ever really progressed past the 2019 season, and he just benefited from that 2019 season of just being able to kind of fly under the radar.
Yeah. So we'll see if there are more, I don't know, if there are more defections in the portal to follow, depending on how the rest of the season goes. Again, we'll kind of briefly recap everything that went wrong this past Saturday. And again, nothing went right for Temple in a 45-3 loss, another scoreless first quarter. Temple didn't get their 3 points until the fourth quarter. So again, this was never competitive. Just again, they've been banged up, but again, 45-3 to ECU. A lot of records were set in this game, not of the good kind. Again, it sounds like the easiest question to tee up, but what did you guys think of Saturday when you were watching?
I mean, they don't do anything well. I feel like I said that after the Central Florida game
running
too.
Out of things to say about this team.
I'm not, and I kind of wrote that even in the IA. I was like, there's nothing that I can say at this point that hasn't already been said about why this team is struggling. They don't block anyone, they don't tackle anybody. They blew 3 coverages for big touchdowns. Dudes were wide open. MJ Griffin let a guy run right by him. Amir Tyler had a mix-up with, I'm guessing that was Palmer at that point in the game, the second touchdown on the play-action wheel route. It was 4th and 16. They dropped 9 into coverage and give up 17 yards or whatever it ended. It was 15, and they gave up 16 yards. You drop 9 and you can't prevent them from getting 15 yards. I don't even know what else to say at that point. And ECU is a good team. They're definitely a team that has some good players, and they're not bad or anything, but Temple should at least look like they belong on the same field as that ECU program, regardless of where they're at. And ECU just looked like that, they were a Power 5 school and Temple was in the FCS. Like that's really what it looked like watching the game. Like, it was brutal. They were getting abused up front, both sides of the trenches. Guys weren't lining up, giving up easy touchdowns late in the game. Like, I don't even know what else to say. Can't protect the quarterback. Dwan Mathis goes down again. Looked like they were trying to push the ball down the field a little bit more, but nobody was open. Justin Lynch comes in. He's 6 for 20 for like 20 passing yards or whatever it was. He rushes for like a little over 50 yards. He's the second leading rusher on the team. He's a backup quarterback who doesn't play a ton. I know he's a rushing player, but like him being your second leading rusher is not good. Your leading rusher has barely over 200 yards this year. Like, I don't even know like where we go from here talking about this team. It's just like, they're not good at anything. There's not a lot of bright spots. There's some young players on the defense who seem like maybe they'll be okay if they stick around for a couple of years, but offensively, I don't really think there's any positives. We don't know if Dwan's going to play this weekend. It might be Justin Lynch again. He looked brutal against ECU. Like, I don't know what else to say. I really don't.
John, do you know who the ink spots are?
The what?
John, that's more of a question to John. I know Dante's not going to know. The ink spots, they were like a jazz band from the 30s and 40s.
Yeah, I never got a chance to see them live.
They had a song called It's All Over But the Crying. That's what all this shit is. Like,
what made you reach back for that?
It's just a good song. I mean, it's all over but the crying. Like it's bad football. It's boring football, especially on offense. Like, it's really boring football. They don't have an identity. They try to be this identity where we're going to get our guys in motion. We have Jaden Blue, we have Randall Jones, we have Amon Anderson. We're going to take advantage of it. That novelty's worn off. People are sniffing that out right away. They haven't had a successful little like fake jet sweep toss pass since the Amon Anderson touchdown against Memphis. It's just boring football. And it's the same thing we talk about every week, where the second anything goes wrong with this team, it's done. Over. It's completely done. Like, they crumble, whether that's just being like the fetus mentality of like, oh, it's happening again, let's just keep letting it happen. They decide to become Eeyores instead of winning the Poos. Like, it's still they just completely crumble. So, like, I guess if you're an optimist, you go, well, they forced 2 turnovers. Freddie Johnson and Jalen Ware had 2 interceptions. It's the first time since 2004 that they forced 2 turnovers, didn't turn over the ball themselves, and they still lost. And they lost by 40. So, like, it's just incredibly bad football. It's almost become like, it's predictable, obviously. Like, they're going to lose by a crap ton on Saturday, and I'm going to get another stupid tweet from John Rothstein, and I'm going to take another shot at John Rothstein. I'm going to get my 60 likes, and I'm going to go to bed, and I'm going to wake up, and it's going to be the same narrative it always is. So we can break down the X's and O's in the ECU Temple game as much as we want, but, like, what are we doing? It's just the same stuff. Something needs to change. Something's going to have to change.
Before we get to previewing Houston, which again is what's the spread in that game?
24, 25. I think they're 25-point dogs at home.
That seems
it's a doubleheader though, an old school Temple doubleheader.
Yes,
it seems a little low. Not gonna lie.
I will be there for the basketball game. Will not be there for the football game, but I'll be at the Liacouras Center. 24. Yeah, I'm hate to pile it on, but
I, respecting the subscribers to owlscoop.com, will be doing the doubleheader. For my first appearance in a while.
So, yeah, before we get to talking about how horribly mismatched Temple is going to be against Houston, one of the interesting remarks to come out of player availability yesterday, if you check out our story from Javon Edmonds from yesterday's player availability story, Kobe Wilson was one of the guys that spoke. It was Jalen Ware, Kobe Wilson, and Jacoby Sharp were made available to reporters. And Kobe Wilson had this to say, just when he was talking about, how these guys hold it together at this point. And you'll hear him say here that I know these guys want to win. They hate losing. But he didn't stop there, and he made an interesting remark about finger pointing. So here's what Kobe Wilson had to say when it came to that.
Well, I know these guys want to win, man. These guys hate losing, even though sometimes it may not show. But these guys, they want to point fingers at certain things, certain people, certain coaches. Like, we can't do that. And I tell them that all the time. Like, we got to look at ourselves, man. If we keep pointing fingers all around, we're eventually going to be the problem, man. So I told him we gotta take account and we gotta hold ourselves accountable and just keep going, man, because they gotta see things through. We still got 3 games left. We can make it bowl if we win out right now. And these guys, they're still pushing. We had a players only meeting the other day, and these guys said they're all in and they're willing to go their all for these last 3 games, no matter what happens.
All right, so what do you guys make of this? When Kobe Wilson says they want to point fingers at certain things and certain coaches, and we can't do that, we have to hold ourselves accountable. So he's talking about this players only meeting that they had. Obviously as reporters, we can ask questions. We're not embedded in that locker room, but when you guys hear that and you see that quote, what's the first thing that goes through your mind when you hear Kobe Wilson saying that?
I think it's like what you expect to hear from a player. At least that's what I expect to hear from a player, is that, they have to hold themselves accountable. I do think it's funny that they had a players only meeting after the 4th blowout. You know what I mean? Where
that we know of, who knows if there were ones before.
Right. Like maybe they had another one, but as far as we know, right, it was like the 4th blowout is where we draw the line. But I that's what I expected. It just, it is interesting that Kobe's like a rod recruit, right? So maybe he doesn't want to, take shots at the coaching staff, but honestly, that's kind of where I came down on, is that's what players are going to say. They're going to say it's on us, and we talked amongst ourselves and we're going to do better. So it is interesting that they had a players only meeting. I'd be interested to know who were the leaders of that meeting, as far as, who was kind of leading the charge on that one, because I think that there are some players who are younger on this team who have a loud voice. Kobe's one of them. But I don't know. For me, I don't think it was that big of a thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's just my interpretation of it.
Yeah, we talk about coach speak a lot, right? I mean, player speaks a thing too. It's few and far between that you see somebody that's wow, that completely came out of left field. They're really being honest here. I think if you had laid out the script of they just gotten 4 blowouts and now they're 3-6, and you would say, okay, they're probably going to call a player meeting at some point. I do think, that's newsworthy that it's a freshman linebacker instead of maybe a junior captain or something like that. But I think it's more of honestly, I think if they're being honest with themselves, it's more of a players only meeting for the future than it is for this season. Hey, we need to rally together. Hey, there's still a reason we chose Temple. Hey, let's see this through and trust the administration and blah, blah, blah. Rather than it being, well, we got to get together and really hammer Houston. Yeah. It's kind of my interpretation.
I just think it's interesting to hear him say they want to point the fingers at certain coaches. And of course, you naturally wonder who's pointing the fingers at coaches and who in that room is saying, no, it's on us. But again, that's why
completely hypothesizing. If I was I would assume it's somebody on the offense. I would assume it's someone talking about we don't take chances on offense anymore. We don't go deep. We don't do blah blah. We don't get protection.
Yeah.
Maybe. Yeah. That's fine.
So yeah, and again, as we've talked about a million times before, when you're winning, people can still be upset, but everybody shuts up because you're winning. But when you're losing like this, all sorts of stuff comes out in the wash. So, again, they're facing an 8-1 Houston team at noon on Saturday at Lincoln Financial Field. Dante, once again, handling the preview for us. There are problems for the Owls on both sides of the ball here. Good running backs, a good quarterback in Clayton Tune, Nathaniel Dell. I'm just looking up and down the roster here. Obviously, Alton McCaskill is going to be a problem for him. He's already scored 12 touchdowns. Tazon Henry isn't going to be a treat for them either. Dante, I don't see a single favorable matchup in this game for Temple. I'm trying to just rack my brain here and think, well, maybe you need to see this, you need to see that. Obviously, the most obviously you can point to is, if DeJuan Mathis doesn't play and, we don't have a definitive word on that. If Justin Lynch plays, you set your eyes to him and say, okay, did he fare well against Houston here? Did he not go 6 for 20 again? Are we in the situation where we're just covering this team and saying you're looking for signs of progress and guys that could have something to build on for next year? But I'm just, I don't know. This just looks ugly.
Yeah, it is. I did have a ton of fun scouting Houston, though. I'm not going to lie. Fun football team, ton of really, really good playmakers on both sides of the ball. But I'm with you, John. I don't think that there is a single matchup that is favorable to Temple. Houston's defensive line is just filled with three monsters, and Temple's offensive line has been brutal this year. I mean, like, obviously that's headlined by like Logan Hall. He's like a potential NFL guy. I mean, they have like 25.5 tackles for loss this season, just between Logan Hall, DeAnthony Jones, and David. Oh my God, I'm going to butcher that. I'm not even going to try, but that's their like three top defensive linemen, 25.5 tackles for loss. Hall has 9.5 by himself. I mean, like, they're just monsters. They have 69 tackles for loss this year as a team. Their linebackers are really instinctive. They come downhill. They're very disruptive. Temple might be starting Wisdom Quarshi and Rich Rodriguez again. I don't know how good those guys have been this year, so like that's obviously a problem. Clayton Tune's having the best year of his career. I didn't realize this. He's like low-key been their starter since like the back half of the 2018 season. Like I really didn't realize that he's been the guy this long. De'Aaron King got hurt, so he kind of took over for him. You know, Nathaniel Bell's a pretty good receiver. You know, he's like second in the AAC in yards. Like, I could just keep going. You talked about McCaskill, 603 yards as a freshman. He's got 12 touchdowns already. They have their punt and kick returner is incredibly good. Blanking on his first name. His last name's Jones, Marcus Jones. He's a cornerback, wide receiver, running back, kick returner. He's got 4 kick return touchdowns this year, 2 on punts, 2 on kickoffs. He plays everywhere. He's got 2 interceptions as a corner. He's another potential NFL guy. I mean, like, Houston's got like playmakers like all over the place, offense, defense. Their offensive line has played well this year. It's like hard to like name stats about offensive linemen, but like they're good. They've been good this year. They're a really good football team. They're 8-1 for a reason. They've rattled off 8 straight wins for a reason. Temple might lose this game by like 60 points. Like, I would not be surprised if like Marcus Jones returns like a punt and a kick for a touchdown. Like that's kind of what I'm expecting this week. This is a good football team. They're playing their best football of the season. NFL athletes all over the board. They're good. Temple is not. I don't really know what else to say about it, honestly.
I mean, interestingly enough, they needed overtime to beat ECU. They were in a shootout with SMU, who's also good, 44-37 2 weeks ago. And then we're in another shootout with USF, 54-42. If you're looking at some of their previous games and Temple's playing anywhere close to decent football, you might say to yourself, all right, well, they've been giving up some points and they haven't been necessarily winning convincingly for as much talent as they have. Again, they lost 38-21 to Texas Tech in the opener. As Dante said, they've won ever since. You know, they beat Rice, they beat Grambling, not really tested there. Beat Navy 28-20. So blew out Tulsa, but they've been involved in some close games. But again, as we're scouting Temple and we're scouting Houston, you know, if this is the Temple of 2 seasons ago, you'd say, all right, they've got a shot. But you know, because Houston does, you know, they haven't dominated in some of these games, but things are just so bad for Temple right now that I just can't see any way they win this game.
Yeah. Houston has 33 sacks, which is insane considering Temple has 11. Mm-hmm. The only reason they lost to Texas Tech and aren't 9-0 right now is because they threw 4 picks. Right. If they're more conservative with the ball there, they probably win that. They're 9-0 and maybe they're in the conversation for something. Teams don't really run against them well. A lot of that might be because, you know, you get into these shootouts and you have to throw the ball. But even when teams try to run the ball against them, they don't run well. Like Tulsa ran the ball 28 times for 31 yards. Tulane 38 times for 94 yards. They're only giving up 73 rushing yards a game over their last half of the season, last 5 games. So that tells you that, like, you can kind of pass against Texas Tech. But if it's Justin Lynch back there and you don't have Dwan Mathis and you kind of eliminated that deep ball altogether, that sets itself up for some bad situations. This isn't a team that you can really go 3 and out against, and Temple has shown a proficiency at going 3 and out in games like this. So that's one thing to hang your hat on. Yeah, I agree with Dante. I don't know if it's going to be 60 points, but this is going to be a very similar game to me as the last 3 weeks where you look up, you go, oh, they lost by 40-some points, and they were never really in this. And the sideline demeanor is going to be interesting because, to be honest, I don't expect it to be a huge crowd, but I do expect the crowd to be there to not be the most home field advantage-y. I feel like they might be a 12th man for Houston at times. So it'll be interesting.
All right, prediction time. What do you have?
54-7.
At 56-10.
I'll do 48-3.
Hey, Dante's an optimist.
Yeah, I'm sticking with the 3. No touchdowns.
This is, I mean, we going back to the ECU game, and this is yet another week where they needed a field goal to avoid getting shut out. Like, it's just
For the first time since 2007.
And we've had that conversation 3 times in the last 4 weeks. Like,
Yeah.
It just keeps happening. It blows my mind that there hasn't been like any change whatsoever. So
Did you guys expect it to be this? We talked obviously about this being a critical season. They're coming off 1-6, COVID, injuries, all that stuff. And you say, okay, maybe things are better this season. Did you guys expect it to be this bad?
no, I thought they were going to a bowl a month
absolutely
ago.
not.
Like when they beat Memphis, I thought they'd find a way to get bowl eligible. I thought they'd beat USF. The writing was on the wall with me when you had 15 days to prepare for South Florida and you looked worse than you had at all this season. It's completely justifiable to me, or at least understandable to me, when you get blown out by Cincinnati. Cincinnati blows a lot of teams out. They're one of the best teams in the nation. They shouldn't be number 5 in the college football playoff ranking. They should be in the playoffs right now. When you go against a team in USF, who is also their coaching staff is going to get fired. Like, they are such a bad program that they are going to have to wipe house, and they dominate you. And you had 2 weeks to prepare for that. It was the writing on the wall at that point. But no, to answer your initial question, no, I thought they'd find a way to squeak out 5-6 wins and go from there. And then you build for 2022. Now I think you're bringing in the bulldozer and you're pretty much having to overhaul the program.
I agree. I never thought that this was going to be a good football team, but I thought they'd be like average. Like, this struck me as an average football team coming into the year, 5-7 win club. Maybe you make a bowl game, maybe you don't. But this was, for me at least, like very much a building year, right? Where it's like, okay, next year's the year, right? The young guys have had, a couple of years to develop. You get Mathis in the new system. Hopefully, he has a decent year. He has a jump year, right? You always look for those jump years in quarterbacks. That's what I kind of thought was going to happen, and obviously it has not gone that way. I agree with Kyle. I think the Bulldozer's making a left-hand turn on a North Broad Street right now.
It's my favorite quote from Major League when they're getting bad. He goes, "It's over. Bring the bulldozers in. Let's turn this place into a parking lot. Just wipe it all out. Start anew." Obviously, there's some building blocks here. Hopefully, they're still there if this continues to stretch out. But
Basically how Randy Quaid talks in real life now, pretty much.
if you can get him on the record, he's out living in people's houses somewhere in New Mexico. Actually, I think he's banned from the U.S. now. I don't know where he's at. That's the dream, to be banned from an entire country. Like, he did something so ridiculous that you know what? Done. You can't come back.
Still brilliant in Christmas Vacation, which I will watch at least 30 times over the next month or so.
Well, we're already getting Christmas decorations up inside the Gal's house, so might
Are
be
you happy
more
about
than
that or no?
I'm not happy about most things, John. No, my whole thing with this is, in general, I tend to be like, well, you got to give Thanksgiving its due, right? Like, you got to wait till Thanksgiving and then do whatever the hell you want after that. My wife just completely disagrees with that. It's a season. It's not a day. And then here
Which
we
is
go.
how I feel.
Do you have Christmas decorations up right now?
Not yet. We've been listening to some Christmas music here and there, watching a couple of Christmas movies. Watched White Christmas already. Watched It's a Wonderful Life.
I haven't done anything like that. But no, we do have we have crap in my house. Jordan thinks everything's a toy now. So you pick that up and he's playing with this. I'm like, where the hell did you get a stuffed Christmas tree? Oh, that's supposed to be a decoration. And then
let him be him. Let Jordan be Jordan.
Peacock, you gotta let him fly.
Well, as we mentioned at the outset of the podcast, Sam Cohn has our report on your Temple Owls, who opened up their basketball season at the Liacouras Center Wednesday night. Here's Sam with the report on what happened with your Owls in the opener.
So Temple picked up its first win of the season, opening night against Maryland Eastern Shore, 72-49, but it did not come without a few bumps and bruises along the way. Predominantly Temple's slow start. They really weren't able to get much going offensively. Thankfully for them, the Hawks couldn't really were kind of in the same boat. Neither team shot the ball very well to start the game. Temple had jumped out to what at most was a 12-point lead with up 24-12 with about 4 minutes left in the first half. And then Maryland Eastern Shore's late first half run knocked down a couple threes and were able to cut the deficit to just once. Temple goes into the first half locker room with a 1-point lead and not a whole lot to hang their hat on. I mean, offensively, they were able to kind of find good looks early, but nothing was really falling for them. And defensively, Maryland Eastern Shore was getting a lot of shot opportunities. again, in a similar boat where they weren't always falling. So it was almost a game, it's, as basketball always is, a game of runs, where the end of the first half was a nice was a run for Maryland Eastern Shore, who cut the deficit before the half, and then the second half was pretty much all Temple. It seemed they found their footing a lot better, kind of at both ends of the floor. A couple performances that really stood out. Obviously, Zack Hicks, who, his first touch of a ball in a live game came in the right corner, and Jeremiah Williams fed him a bullet of a pass that went right through his hands and ended up in the stands. That was the first time Zack Hicks had touched a basketball in a live game. And then, I think it was his next shift in minutes later, he knocks down his first two 3-point attempts, misses the next one, and knocks down the next one. But that was really the turning point of this game. It was a relatively close game about midway through the second half, and Zack Hicks knocks down two in a row. Caleb Battle gets one, and Temple starts to put together a little bit of a run. And that was a run that they turned into a win. Again, it was 72-49 was the final score. Temple was led by Caleb Battle, who had 22 points. Damian Dunn chipped in 18. The two of them were really the spark plug offensively. Caleb didn't necessarily get going until the second half. He finished with 3 threes, 3 of 7 from three-point land. Damian Dunn was, the one that really got things going for them offensively early. A guy that last year was known as, or Aaron McKie had said that he was the kind of guy that could get them a bucket in a drought. That's pretty much what he did tonight. When no one else could really get going offensively, Damian Dunn was that guy. Beyond Zack Hicks, the other two Temple players that made their debuts were, in a way, Sage Tolbert, who had only played 8 minutes all of last season. So Sage Tolbert got the start tonight, and he didn't do much offensively, but he hauled in 4 rebounds. He played 30 minutes. He had 2 blocks. He was good, but he didn't show. I don't think he necessarily showed anything that was really definitive of his game. He proved to be a guy that can bully down low. He proved to be a guy that can get rebounds, but offensively he wasn't able to really establish himself or create anything. So I don't think we learned a whole lot about Sage Tolbert's game, whether that's just the first game or what he looks like moving forward. And then Jaleel White, who only played about 13 minutes, I think it was. He had a couple nice plays, but another guy that didn't necessarily do anything crazy offensively. I think he had 1 3-point attempt. It didn't fall. Defensively, he showed that defensive prowess that we've heard so much about, pressing guys up, 2/3 of the way to the floor. Had a couple nice blocks. One that was called back for a foul, but just kind of showed his athletic prowess, his ability to defend multiple positions. So, those were the 3 guys that we really saw debuts from. I think, as expected, Caleb Battle and Damian Dunn were leading the way offensively. Jeremiah Williams only played 26 minutes. There was kind of a blip in the second half where, he was off the floor for a while. It looked like he was stretching on the side, so maybe pulled something minor, but he was okay the rest of the way, so I don't anticipate that was anything noteworthy. Another interesting player or performance, I guess, that we saw tonight was from Ty Strickland, who played pretty sparingly last year, came into the season after having shoulder surgery, and sort of got squeezed out of the lineup for a lot of last season just because he wasn't totally there. Said post-game that he felt like, mentally he wasn't necessarily there the whole way last season, and he feels a lot more confident in his ability in his game this year. Ty Strickland poured in 10 points, 4 of 5 shooting, 2 for 3 from the stripe. He only played 9 minutes, but made the most of those 9 minutes. So Ty Strickland definitely a name to keep an eye out for. If he can be a guy that can give Jeremiah Williams or give Caleb Battle or Damian Dunn a blow offensively and defensively in that backcourt, then he could be a really interesting piece for this Temple team. All in all, again, this was not a great first half from Temple. A lot of first game jitters. Aaron McKie said he chalked it up to almost an out-of-body experience for a lot of these guys in their first game. But a second half where they really found their footing, and then they were able to really put their foot on the gas against this Maryland Eastern Shore team. So overall, it's a win. If you're Temple, you're happy with. I think you're obviously much happier with the way they responded to adversity. But a win is a win on opening night. Again, Temple 72-49. They'll take on USC, University of Southern California, this Saturday after, which I'm sure the guys on the pod have mentioned that will be after the Temple football game Saturday at noon. So a Temple-packed Saturday this weekend. And Temple will have, again, USC that night, and then they'll have nearly a week off before they head south for the Charleston Classic, face Clemson on opening day. Shout out to Sam Newman, who I think will be there covering Clemson. So 1-0 for Temple, and we'll see the floor again on Saturday.
All right, thanks to Sam. We'll, of course, have more coverage in the coming week. Temple plays USC Saturday night. Kyle and I will be there. And Kyle, as he mentioned, will nobly be working the doubleheader on Saturday. So
I don't even know if I'm going to be there. You ignored my text this morning.
What's that?
I asked you, hey, do I need to do anything for the USC game on Saturday? No response.
Took care of it.
Oh, good. I will be there, man.
Yes.
I'll be eating I'll do the cheesesteak without the roll for your football, and then I guess I'll do a little Philly style pizza. Wrap up my day.
Think you'll make it home safely after that?
Oh yeah. Bowels of steel.
All right, let's go to the mailbag. A lot of fun questions this week, some from Twitter, some from the message boards. We'll start with the message boards. This comes from the screen name JHG722, a longtime Al Scoop subscriber. JHG722 asks, what's the least enjoyable Temple football game you've ever watched? Can we go with this past Saturday?
Can we go with the next one?
I will say this honestly, and I would say, and I'm not saying it to pile on, I think some of them have been this year. Last year was interesting and not in a good way. The season before, they were competitive. They were pretty good. And every previous, coaching tenure, whether it was Jeff Collins, whether it was Matt Rule, there was even Steve Adazio, Al Golden, there was, and I'm not saying those guys were perfect, but there was a plan. There was some sort of upward trajectory. I have felt over the last several weeks like I'm watching pre-2006 Temple football. No identity. Like Kyle said earlier in the pod, as soon as something goes wrong, boom, it's done. And so much of what's been built up with the culture over the last several years is teaching this team how to win, overcoming sudden change, because it was a huge overhaul when Al Golden took over. He got them to a certain point, and then Matt had to build them back up again. And every coach has kind of dealt with that, but I've just never, it's been a long time since I've seen it this bad. So I honestly would go with several of the games from this season. I've never looked at the program this flatly as I have recently, where they're just not doing anything well in any phase of the game.
I have two actual answers. One is that UConn game on Tuesday during a hurricane where they ended up losing on a late Donald Brown touchdown. Yeah. That was just disaster because I'm standing in a hurricane for 4 hours. And then a game from Jeff Collins' first year when they go down to South Florida and they lost 43-7 and they only had 70 yards of offense, and the only score came from a Jacob Martin sack, strip sack. That was a pretty awful game too, and kind of showed you hey, yeah, you still got a lot of growth to go before you can compete with these guys. The difference is the next year they figure things out and they beat South Florida and they go toe with a good Central Florida team. Those are the two games that kind of stick out to me as really bad.
Dante?
Mine, I have a much smaller scope of Temple football than you guys do. Mine is the night game against UCF at home 2 years ago. They lost. That wasn't that bad of a game, but I wasn't feeling well that morning, and I toughed it out to go to that night game at Lincoln Financial Field. And they got blown. They showed up to that game with no plan for the RPO, and UCF went I think they won it 63-20, and I was I was supremely annoyed.
63-21. It was 28-21 at halftime.
Yeah.
And then 35 straight points.
Yeah. Done. It was a brutal second half. I was in a foul mood because I was sick. So that is a very stale memory for me. But honestly, I agree with John. Again, I've only have 4 years of Temple football to really go off of. But this year is just it's just boring. I'm a journalist. Maybe I'm not supposed to say that or whatever, but it's boring. It's just not entertaining to watch. I'm not a Temple fan. I don't care if they win or lose, but watching good football is enjoyable. Covering good football is enjoyable. This is just every drive is inside zone to Edward Sadie for 2 yards and then 2 incompletions, or one of them's a jet motion pass and Jaden Blue gets tackled a yard past the line of scrimmage and then they punt and it's 3rd and 8. it's so boring. So for me, it'd be this year, but like the UCF one from 2 years ago stands out because I was super, super sick for that game. And then they gave up like 35 straight points in the second half. And I was like really annoyed.
Yeah. I mean, and even with the games pre 2006, 2005, and when they were in the Big East before that, even if they were getting their barn doors blown off on certain occasions, you could say, oh, wow, there's Frank Gore, there's Andre Johnson, there's Michael Vick. You know, you'd see some really good players. Not that you're not seeing good players in the American, but you'd say, wow, okay, I'm seeing football at a very high level. I mean,
Frank Gore, the boxer?
Yes.
He used to play football?
Yeah. Most
certainly. Beat the crap out of Deron Williams.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, I mean, if you wanted me to get specific, and I can't even really say it was, I mean, it was still an interesting game to cover. I mean, it was more so the game and the trip. I mean, going up to cover that Temple Buffalo game in 2008 when they, you know, the Drew Willie to Naaman Rosenfeld Hail Mary, and then the ensuing drive home, just driving down from Western New York in a rainstorm certainly was not fun, but even that.
Wait, I need to change my answer to the Buffalo game that I drove to 2 years ago.
Oh, yeah.
We went up there for 8 hours. Jared Patterson ran for like 5 billion yards, and then
we didn't get players.
Rod Carey did not give us players after the game, and I was like supremely annoyed about that too, because we had just driven all the way up to Buffalo, and I can't even get player interviews like that. That's my answer. I forgot about that.
I was at a wedding on Long Island and it had like 9 vodka diets, so I was having a great day. You guys were having a horrible day.
All righty then. Next question. 9 vodka diets. Wow. Next question.
You ever have that realization when you realize you're the drunkest one at a wedding? I think I had the realization that day.
How big was the wedding?
Reel this back. It was like a friend of Meg's from high school.
I mean, how big? Like 200 people?
Oh, it was like a standard, like 150, 160
it's still
people.
An accomplishment.
But you still got to realize at one point, you're like, let's just tone this down a notch. Watch that Temple Buffalo game from the bar at the cocktail hour on like a little like 20-inch TV. I remember I had to ask the person to put it on. I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like, why am I put that Temple game on during a cocktail hour? Can
you tell Dante your story about you and Meg being at Fox and Hound and you thought that somebody recognized you?
So we're at Fox and Hound. Meg and I used to go to Fox and Hound a lot because we lived near Fox and Hound before it shut down. They used to have a thing called $2 Tuesdays where every beer was $2 regardless. So you could get like Mad Elves, and these are like 9.5%, 11% beers for $2. So we go there one day. I think something had just happened. Like I was on some radio spot or some TV spot or something. Go to Fox and Hound, sit down at the bar, enjoying myself. A girl comes up to me and taps me on the shoulder and says, "Are you Kyle?" And I was like, "Oh, somebody saw my TV spot. Yeah, I'm Kyle Gauss." Like, well, she's like, "You dropped your wallet. Here's your ID." Like she just found my wallet on the ground and was like, "Here's your driver's license. This is why I'm asking your name." And in my mind, I was like, "Oh, my bad." Another round of Mad Elves.
Did Meg say something to you? Like, why did you think somebody recognized you?
Meg, well, my wife is not she's not going to mix words with that. Like, or mince words. She's not going to mince words. So she was pretty straightforward. Thank you for bringing up that memory, John.
No problem. The next question here from the message board comes from Diamond and Broad. It's the screen name. Question number 1, is Kerry's buyout based on the number of years left on his contract, or is it prorated by games coached? In other words, are they not firing him now because the buyout goes down after he coaches his last game this year? To answer your question, Diamond and Broad, but without having seen his actual contract, I could not give you a precise answer on that. I've been told by a couple sources that, you know, if it were to finish out the rest of the season, he would be owed a certain percentage of what's left on his contract. So I've heard a couple of different numbers. Couldn't tell you for sure if it's prorated by games coached. The second part of Diamond and Broad's.
I've been waving my hands for 5 seconds. So I can't talk exactly about this contract, but standardly, even to the point where when you look at Rod Carey's contract at NIU, like his actual contract, normally it's not by game. Normally there's like a set date where it's like, okay, this is considered like the end of year 1 of the contract. Now it's year 2. The question becomes, which I really don't think is the case, at NIU, that was the end of the fiscal year. So like July 1 would be when his buyout would go down. At Temple, I tend to think it's January 1, but yeah, like I said, Temple is a state affiliated university. These things do not have to be public information, so we're just guessing at this point.
Yeah. Second part of that
Informed guessing.
question is assuming Kerry gets fired, is the team the new coach would take over next year, assuming that team is who is on the roster today, be better or worse than the one Rule took over?
I like this question.
How much of a rebuild is this? This is a good question. Kyle, what do you think? Then Dante, I'll go to you.
I think it really depends on what the next 2 months look like, right? I mean, when you look at what the roster that Matt Rule took over, a lot of those contributors and the people that you kind of looked at as bright spots in that 2013 team weren't committed to Temple until after he took over. PJ Walker, Jahad Thomas, Deion Dawkins,
Dwayne Taylor.
Was Jacob Martin wasn't part of that class. I think he was the next one. But they brought in all these future NFL guys during that time. There were some guys like Tavon Young was on that 2012 team. Tyler Matakevich was on that 2012 team. Nate D. Smith, who's probably an underrated defensive end / linebacker at Temple, was on that team. But I think right now, like if you compared what I think the roster is going to look like December 1 of this year versus what it looked like December 1 of 2011 or 2012, sorry. It's probably a little better. The difference is that Matt Rule really came in and restacked that roster in those 6 to 8 weeks. So it'll be curious to see whoever the next new guy is, who Coach Sam Cohn comes in and brings in the next 2 months would be the difference, my question. But I mean, I think there's building blocks on this team. I really do. Like, I think on defense, like you have a number of guys that played a lot on safety that are going to end up being like decent guys here if they stay. Defensive line still needs to be fixed. Offense, I think there's still good receivers coming back. It's just a matter of, can you supplement the right type of guys? Can you bring in the right coaching staff?
Dante, what do you think?
I won't speak on whether or not this is a better roster than the one Matt Rule inherited. I didn't cover that team. I was about 12 years old when that happened. Yeah, so I won't speak on that. I will speak to the rebuild part. I think regardless of what happens, I think this is going to be a multi-year rebuild, only because my assumption is that the coach that comes in is going to want to reset the culture here, and we can talk about resetting that culture back to what it was when Matt Rule, and maybe that's a little bit easier than going back completely against the grain to what this program has never been. So maybe it doesn't take too long, but my guess is that if Rod leaves, I think a lot of players are going to transfer regardless, right? I think we'll see different guys transfer if Rod stays versus leaves, but I still think that we'll see players leave, some of those younger players. So I think it's going to be a multi-year rebuild. And honestly, I think it should be a multi-year rebuild. I think that is the way to go. I think whoever the new head coach is should get 2 years to kind of, set this place back on the right track, because things have spiraled. We all said it way further out of line than we thought they were going to. And it just doesn't seem like the program is embracing what made it better that when Rule was here, even Jeff Collins to a certain extent, with what some of the things that Al Golden implemented too. It just seems like they've gotten so far away from what made Temple successful that it's going to take a couple years to correct that course. I don't think it's, even if they hire someone off the Matt Rule coaching tree, I don't think they're just going to come in and they're going to snap their fingers and everything here is fixed. So I think regardless, it's going to be a multi-year rebuild. Maybe it'll be easier if they bring in a Matt Rule guy and then they kind of have that, maybe it's an easier shift. I don't know, but I think it's at least going to be 2 years no matter what.
I think if it's a Matt Rule guy and they're anything like Matt Rule, the portal is what makes this a tricky conversation. I think I don't think that any coach who comes in, if there is indeed a change, that any coach will come in and probably try to look for some help in the portal. But if they're anything like Matt Rule, they probably don't want to cut corners on this. Again, they're going to need time to evaluate the current roster and the 6 verbal commits they have. So they're not looking at a huge list, and 6 is a slim list at this point as we enter mid-November, to say the least. They're probably going to look at the roster and they probably aren't going to want to cut corners. They're going to say, do I have anything I like on the offensive line? Do I have anything I like in this backfield? How good to me is Jose Barbone, Jordan Smith? Can I work with, Dwan Mathis and stuff like that? But yeah, I agree with you. If it's anyone from the Rule coaching tree, they're probably going to say, hey, I saw how Matt built this. I saw how he rebuilt things at Baylor. I see what he's doing with the Panthers right now. Not to say the Panthers are playing well right now, but if Matt rebuilds things with the Panthers, it's certainly not happening overnight. Yeah, I think it would be, a 2 to 3 year journey, so to speak, on this. So
real quick, I want to talk about those 6 verbal commits. This is kind of weird. If anybody that's plugged in, if you're paying attention to recruiting, I think it's become painfully obvious that they haven't offered a high school kid in a month, and they're only offering JUCO and grad transfers, which 1 reeks of desperation, but 2 is not a good sign for the future of the program.
Yeah, I mean, and if you follow our recruiting coverage, and Caden Steele's been doing a lot of stories for us, a lot of 2023 and 24 kids who have been offered by Preston Brown. I'm not saying that the only kids that have been offered are the ones that Caden's doing stories on, but we're not seeing much in the way of guys from this class. And
Right.
They lost one already, which again, that happens with every coaching regime. But I agree with Kyle on that one. Next one here from what to you is the screen name over under for games before there's a potential fire McKie thread on the message board.
I assume this is primarily tongue in cheek, but if they lose to USC and then maybe they lose to Clemson, and I'm sure somebody will post it. But we talked about this a little bit last week. I'm relatively optimistic about this Temple basketball team. I feel a lot more optimistic about this Temple basketball team than I do this Temple football team. And the first third or first half of the schedule is pretty easy for Temple. So it wouldn't surprise me if they get off to a hot start. But to answer this question, it could be 1.5. It could be 2 games in that they start a fire.
Yeah, and just an editorial note here: we're recording this portion of the pod, the mailbag, before Wednesday night's game against Maryland Eastern Shore. But
if they somehow lost last night, when you listen to this, then maybe it already happened.
Yeah.
Maybe somebody already posted that thread.
Yeah. Good point. Next question here comes from the screen name E. Cheney on the message board. Assuming Kerry is fired, which I will have to see to believe, if the players knew right now, would that slow down the transfer train out of Temple, or does it even matter at this point?
Here's kind of what I've gathered from talking to a couple people is, first of all, I don't think there's a transfer train yet. Like, there's been 2 guys, right? There's been Nick Baggs and there's been Jaden Blue, the people that were actually playing that transferred. I think the longer this goes, the more it creeps into people's heads and the more that people are in people's ears. Like, they're saying, like, oh, like, your coach is going to be gone in a couple weeks anyway. Why would you stick around? Versus, I think if you do this sooner than later, I think people, like, look, there's a reason these kids committed to Temple, right? They wanted to come to Temple University, or it was the best option for them. I think if you say, like, hey, there is going to be a coaching change, that buys you a little bit of grace period for a lot of these kids, where they're going to say, look, I'm at least, like, willing to stick around to see who you hire. Because, hey, maybe they have a favorite when they were being recruited. Maybe they're being recruited by old Mrs. blah, blah, blah coach. And they really liked him. And, maybe there's a possibility that guy becomes the coach. I think it buys you some time. But if you just keep living in this no man's land of, is he going to get fired? Is he going to stay? Then that doesn't help anybody. The people that want Rod Kerry to stay are going to be like, well, maybe I should get out of here before he gets fired. The people that don't want Rod Kerry to stay say, maybe I should get out of here just in case that he does stay. So I think it's just worse of both worlds.
Yeah,
I agree with Kyle. I think it's going to be, some guys are going to leave either way. I mean, every time a program changes head coaches, guys transfer, like, regardless of the optics of, how long that coach was there, how long it drug out. So I would imagine that there's going to be a air quotes transfer train, no matter what happens here. It's just which guys are leaving is the only thing that's going to change, at least in my opinion.
Real quick, I think the worst thing they could do is be like, okay, if we wait till January 1, that saves us $1.2 million or whatever. We should wait for that. And during that time, there was a mass exodus, and now you're down to 50 scholarship guys, and you're bringing a new guy who can only bring in 32 players, and all of a sudden he's like, well, crap, I'm playing with a short-handed deck, like the short deck, and you're even further behind the 8 ball by just dragging it out to save a couple pennies. I say save a couple pennies if $1.2 million isn't a lot of money, but it's to save a couple pennies.
Yeah. Next question in the mailbag here. Switching gears, certainly the screen name is TU Owls Fan 2004. Who are your 3 favorite baseball players of all time? Kyle, your team just won the World Series. We'll start with you.
That's a good question. I saw this beforehand. I should have had it. I'm going to say Freddie Freeman's one of them, just because I kind of just obviously, like, you see it from the beginning of his career. There's this certain stretch of Braves fandom where you pretty much just had to look at minor league box scores a lot. So that was part of it. I think Ronald Acuna is one of them. And just to go further back, I think Greg Maddux is the greatest pitcher of all time. So I will say Ronald Acuna, Freddie Freeman, and Greg Maddux. Chipper Jones is definitely up there. Like, that's like my childhood guy. But, like, I think Freddie's surpassed him.
Greg Maddux, greatest pitcher of all time?
Greg Maddux is the greatest pitcher of all time. Greatest pitcher. Not thrower, pitcher
I know.
of all time.
All right. Dante?
Man, it's a tough one. For me, growing up a Phillies fan, right? Like 2008 is like the only thing to hang my hat on. So Chase Utley, I played second base. Yeah, that was my guy. I love Chase Utley. The second one for me is actually a random one, and it's Scott Rowland. And it's because the first baseball card I ever pulled out of a pack was Scott Rowland. And I was like 5 years old. So I just like instantly fell in love with him because that was like the first thing that I was like ever presented. So he's definitely up there for me. And I kind of like stuck with that. He's a pretty good ball player.
It's pretty
Yeah,
good.
yeah, not bad. So I don't really have a third one. Like I'm kind of torn between like Roy Halladay and like Cole Hamels, just like two like very good Phillies pitchers that I kind of got to watch play for a long time. But I don't know. Those are like the ones that come off the top.
All right, I'm going to go old school here because I'm older. So my first, I'm with Dante. I don't know if I have a third. My true two like favorite players, like players that I would just follow their box scores, follow them, are Pete Rose, who, I like number 14. Dude, I'm 45 years old. I liked Pete Rose growing up. Wasn't around for like, his it's not like I was watching him when he was
His good years. You weren't around for his good years.
No,
That's what I'm saying. I don't care about the gambling thing. People gamble left and right. I'm banning him. I don't give a crap about that. You missed his good years. Like you were aware of him when he was getting when he was in like 270. Like
yeah, I remember just being a huge Pete Rose fan. Yes, he was on the tail end of his career with the Phillies. When he broke Ty Cobb's all-time hit record, he was with the Reds. But I remember,
and that's a good segue. John's second favorite guy, Ty Cobb.
No. I remember watching him years ago down at Shad Park when hot dogs were a nickel and the boys were all fighting a war. Anyway, no. No. Ty Cobb was not my second favorite player. My second favorite player, or also a favorite player, I loved Andy Van Slyke with the Pirates. So again, late 80s, early 90s, really liked him. Would try to wear 14 and 18 in Little League. So those guys obviously have long since retired. But yeah, I remember my dad, when we moved to Downingtown from Pittsburgh, he had lost his job in Pittsburgh, had to pick up a second job, and was working at Wawa, second job to make some extra money. He had sliced his thumb on a slicer, a lunch meat slicer. Poor guy had gone to the emergency room, came back after working a shift, and I'm too young to appreciate like the tough morning he had, and he was okay. And no, I think he had done that the weekend before, and then he was just dead tired the weekend after. And I'd heard that Pete Rose was going to be signing autographs at the the Valley Forge Expo Center, which no longer exists, somewhere off the 202. And my mom was like, "Your father's really tired. He needs a break." And I was like, "Dad, can we go? Pete Rose is signing autographs." He's like, "Yeah, we'll go." Awesome father. Wanted to throw that in there for him. I don't know if I have a third. I mean, I could probably pick one of the Phillies over the years. Like,
did that place just become the casino?
No, I want to say, I could be dead wrong on this. I feel like it wasn't. Like, if you're on 202, it was kind of like off to your right. Like,
you're going westbound, or if you're going eastbound.
Yes, if you're going eastbound, I feel like that Expo Center was off to your right. If we have some older listeners, maybe you can correct me on this. I feel like it's not where the casino is now, but I could be wrong. But so it's Pete Rose for me, Andy Van Slyke. I don't know if I truly have a third. Does Roy Hobbs count?
Does not.
We're not going with make-believe players. All right. Like the question there, though. These next few questions here come from Twitter. The first one comes from Sean Ramsden. If you could only keep 3 traditional Thanksgiving Day dishes, including turkey, on your table, what would they be? Also, assuming there's a coaching change, how important or not important would it be for you to hire someone off the Matt Rule coaching tree? So we got some Thanksgiving and some football here. So first one, again, I'll read this again. If you could only keep 3 traditional Thanksgiving Day dishes, including turkey, on your table, what would they be?
Stuffing, cranberry sauce, pie. Done. I get stuffing year round.
He's including, am I reading this right? He's saying,
yeah, I think he's saying turkey is an option. Is what he's saying. And I'm telling you, turkey is like 4th on my list, 5th on my list.
Okay.
So I'm going stuffing, cranberry sauce, and I will say pumpkin pie because I only eat pumpkin pie during Thanksgiving. I'm not like Mel Kiper eats pumpkin pie every day. I don't do that. Thanksgiving.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that about Mel Kiper. Dante?
Man, this is tough. I'm not a big like turkey guy, so that definitely doesn't crack my list either. I'm gonna go with mashed potatoes. My family always made like those biscuits for Thanksgiving, and that was like the only time that we ate them. So that's a traditional Thanksgiving food for me. So that's definitely up there. And then pie, definitely. I'm a big pie guy. Pie's great.
I would go stuffing. Definitely my mother-in-law's stuffing is incredible. Pumpkin pie, and probably like a mashed like sweet potato, something like that. But yeah, I like turkey, but not enough. I just pile my plate with sides to the point where like I'll get to turkey and I'm like, all right, I'll take a few bites here, and then
Like I put turkey on to take away from the fact that I took 40% of the stuffing. I'm like, oh look, guys, just let me hide this under this turkey.
I mean, do you guys have like for thanks? Do you have like appetizers beforehand, or is it just straight up like?
Yeah, we have like hors d'oeuvres beforehand usually. My sister and my in-laws and everything will do that. So that's like deviled eggs and gherkins and other random things.
Gherkins.
But, little gherkin pickle.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah. Thanksgiving.
gherkins. Thanksgiving. Kyle's still ticked off about Graham's stuffing take from a couple years ago.
I don't recall. Who are we talking about?
Graham Foley. Also,
name doesn't ring a bell.
Also, again, the second question here. Also, assuming there was a coaching change, how important or not important would it be to you to hire someone off the Matt Rule coaching tree? Kyle?
That's a good question. And I feel like it's a question that is in a lot of people's minds. Like, hey, do you limit yourself to that? I mean, I don't think you limit yourself to that coaching tree. I think there's a lot of good candidates from that coaching tree, including, I don't even know, like we've kind of just been talking a little bit. Like, I don't know if you go all the way down to somebody like Evan Cooper, or is he too young in his career? I think there's a lot of choices there. I don't think it has to be. I just think it has to be somebody that either understands why Matt Rule was successful here and why Al Golden was successful here, and realize that you really got to work at Temple for a lot of things to get things done. If it's somebody that understands that and kind of just tries to get back to that type of culture, then I don't think it matters if they worked under Rule in the past. So no, I don't think it has to be. Would I? Probably. Does it have to be? No.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that I could say it any better than that. Dante?
Yeah, same here. I just think you need to find someone who understands this area and this program and kind of how to be successful. It doesn't have to be a Matt Rule guy. That's just kind of the easiest tree to point to as far as finding somebody with those traits, I think.
Real quick, I think it's also easier to sell a high quality Matt Rule candidate on Temple than it is to sell some random person on Temple. Like, they know that there is a formula for success at Temple University. So like, if they've seen it done, or if it's somebody like Chris Wiesenhan who's seen it done at two different regimes, like Jeff Collins was relatively successful, Matt Rule was very successful, then it's easier to be like, hey, you should come back and ignore the fact that we went 3-9 and 30 of our guys left. Like, there's the recipe here, as opposed to if I'm UCLA's defensive coordinator and you're offering me the job, I'm like, Jesus Christ, you just went 3-9 and 40 of your guys left. Like, that's a huge undertaking. Maybe I'm not interested in that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Next question here comes from the Twitter handle at TempleFanAl. John, Dante, Kyle, Sam, and Javon versus Temple's projected starting five. What is the final score and who is playing what?
I didn't see this question. Jesus Christ.
I should get
well, Javon's really tall.
He's our center. There's no doubt about that.
Or like, do we are we the Temple of the last 10 years where we're playing an undersized big, or do we just say, hey, let's play towards his skill set? Maybe he's better on the wing, and maybe he's better with the ball in his hand. Like, we don't have to limit him to center.
Well, I'm just saying, if we roll out the starting lineup, we're gonna say he's the center. I mean, he can play. If he plays on the wing, he plays on the wing. But for the purposes of this question, I feel like he's got to be the center.
I think Sam Cohn's the point guard. I think he's the ball in the hand. Like, I want him kind of facilitating the offense. He's the only one that's like played high school basketball at like a relatively high level. So I would say Sam is the one I want to run the offense through.
You want to run the offense through Sam?
I think I'm the two guard. I do. I think I'm the two guard who's like a bit of like a 3-and-D guy. I think I'm the more of like the blue collar guy. John's gonna be little too like hesitant to. I think my body craves contact, so I will say I will say I will be like when Nate Pierre-Louis played like off the ball, and like you're like, oh, he's kind of just like a guard here. I'm kind of like that, like a much less successful version of that.
You're just like a Tasmanian devil who just like tries to drive to the
for like if we're playing like a 40-minute game for like a good like 11 minutes, I am that guy. And then like I'm just like I'm bent down, like I'm gasping for air towards the end, and just like doing like the Olay, like when they run by, like, oh no, please. But for 11 minutes, I'm your guy. This is also half court, right? I'm not doing full court. My knees aren't good enough for full court anymore.
Well, you didn't specify if this is half court or full court, but I mean, like, what's the
final score? We lose that game 140-7. Like we get 7 points. And like when freshman year of college,
how are we getting 7 points?
We're just cherry picking. Like we're having somebody stay back. And then, like, they're going to score a basket, and then somebody's chucking it, and I'm hoping I get an easy layup. Odds are I probably rim it out. I get really nervous that all of a sudden Jeremiah Williams is going to block my shot.
Or Emmanuel Akpomo comes in. You think you have, like, 40 feet of room, and then they just come swooping in. You're like, how did that?
And then, like, they pin it up against the backboard, and then that's the end of that. But, like, that's the only way you get any points is you let them go, and then you attempt threes, and then you hope you don't get shot.
Wait, so our starting five again is me, Dante, Kyle, Sam, and Javon.
You guys are going to have to figure out which one amongst you is playing the four.
Yeah.
John is significantly bigger than me. So I feel like that is like –
Is it?
Yeah, you're a couple inches taller than me.
Dante, how tall are you?
I'm like 5'9".
Oh, okay.
Short.
Maybe Dante. Maybe I'm playing the wing.
Yeah, I think you're playing the wing. And by the way, I did play basketball in high school, Kyle. Excuse me.
I said at a high level.
I was good. I was good. I don't know about a high level. Though.
Do you have a max? Do you have a max preps?
No, definitely not. So
I think Sam has a max.
Sam has a max. Yeah.
I have no doubt that Sam is better than me. That is not where this
Massachusetts
started.
Sam Cohn. Let's see what them stats were, boy. Let's see what we got. Oh, there's no stats. North Chelmsford.
We're definitely running the offense through Sam. I agree.
Sam and Javon are our player coaches. We got to play. I mean, we're positionless basketball. That's what we do. Yeah,
like Aaron McKie says, it's positionless basketball. It's 2021.
Basketball.
Yeah, everyone's a wing.
The only way we win is if, like, there's no shot clock and we somehow manufacture the first basket. We somehow miraculously get a stop, and then we just hold the ball for a long time. And don't make a lot of friends out of that.
A long time. And even then, let's be honest with you, someone's picking the ball clean.
So freshman year of college, my roommates participated in some like 3-on-3 tournament, and they got to like the finals, and it might have been 5-on-5, and they were going up against like dudes that were like these guys could play like D2, D3 basketball. Like they were far and away the better team. So going in, their mentality was we're going to get an early 2-0 lead, and there's no shot clock, and we're just going to hold on to the ball for the next 30 minutes, and they get a 7-0 lead, and they just abandon the entire plan. They're like, nope, we're going to just actually try to play these guys. And they lost like 45-7. If they get upset, you get up early, you just hold on to the ball. People are throwing trash at you. You don't care. You just turtle. And you hold on to the ball. People are too quick to change their plan once they get an early lead. Early success ruined them.
Who would you guard
on that team?
Yeah.
Who can't shoot the most? I'm guarding Emmanuel Akpomo. Well, he's not in the starting lineup.
He's not in their.
I'm guarding Jake Forrester.
Ooh.
Like just like whatever. Like I'm going to try to charge.
Don't we put Javon on Jake, or do we put Javon? So Temple's starting five is Jeremiah Williams, Damian Dung, Caleb Battle, Sage Tolbert, and Jake Forrester. So someone's got to guard Sage. Someone's got to guard.
I'm guarding Jake Forrester. We're freeing up Javon to run in transition. I'm not guarding somebody that's going to have like lateral movement or is going to try to shoot over me. I just want like, you know what? Like I'm going to sit right here. This is my little area. I have a right to this area. My feet are planted, and I'll see what happens.
Dante just lost.
I'm like talking to Jake. They're like, Jake, I have a right to this. This is my area. I'm quoting rules to him, and then he just dunks over.
Maybe they're being coached by Jimmy, and we go over to Jimmy like, Jimmy, listen,
like, Jimmy, just give me like, can you put the kid in from Owen and J. Roberts? Like, please, like, can you please start him?
Still better than us.
Oh, for sure. He was probably like a Chestmont, like all conference guy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Also, I'm in the ice tub for 3 days after that game. Like, just like they're in the whirlpool with me. They're like, we're shutting down. Like, I'm like, no, just leave a light on. Like, I'm good in here for 3 days.
Dante, could you score? Could you think you could get a basket in this game?
A basket?
Yes.
I want to say yes, but I know the answer is no. That's like, I feel like I could hit a 3-pointer. Like, I could shoot in high school. I wasn't good at much else, but like I could shoot. But like I feel like they block me. You know what I mean?
Let me ask this: let's reframe the question, and instead of it being them now, it's us as grown men against Temple starting 5 when they were 12 years old. So they're in 7th grade, and it's us grown men. Could we beat them? I think so.
I think so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Like,
If they're legitimately 12, I think we can beat them.
I think there's a difference. Like, I always tell the story when I was like 13, like, you know, you like you got a little hair on your chest, you're starting to like puff out a little bit. I think I like got in my dad's face a little bit, and it was just like effortless that he just like was able to like dispose of me. I think as a grown man, I could just kind of like bully a 12-year-old. Like, I know this because like I did this over the summer. My 12-year-old nephew beat me in basketball. I spent the entire summer being like, you know what? I'm gonna remember how to play basketball, and you just body him. You just play like you play bully ball. Granted, my nephew is 5'7", as opposed to, I'm sure, Jake Forster when he was 12 was 6'3", but I'm going to bully him.
Wow. Well, we modified that question. So we beat a starting lineup of
like if there was like a shrink ray that shrinked them back to when they were 12 years old. Bodied.
12-year-old Jeremiah Williams could still be very good.
Oh, I'm sure they're all really good. They're professional basketball players.
Well, that's what it's going to take for us to beat them. They all have to be 12. All right. The last question here, and we'll do another quick scan to see if we got any other questions here. Twitter handle is @offthehook3, who has also changed his Twitter name to Temple Tough Fire Rod Kerry. If Temple B-ball makes the NCAA tournament this year, it will be because ... It will, if they make the tournament this year, it will be because of what?
I feel like I'm sorry. I feel like we've asked this question before. My answer is still going to be the same because my opinion hasn't changed because they haven't played the game yet. Caleb Battle and Damian Dunn learn to coexist in the backcourt.
Dante?
Mine would be is they just find a way to incorporate some of their bench guards into productive minutes. Like, I feel like they have a ton of guards. Aaron McKie has kind of set up the roster that way. Like, it would be cool to see, you know, Jaleel White and Ty Strickland have like a legitimate impact off the bench. I think that would be huge for them getting to the tournament.
Yeah, for me, I think when we had some variation of this question or this exact question a few weeks ago. For me, I think it's that you get that Jake Forrester is as improved as they believe him to be, and that you get some decent minutes out of Emmanuel Okpomo. I think if they can have some sort of rebounding improvement, rim protecting improvement, I agree that guard play has to be great, you know, obviously, but I don't necessarily worry about Caleb Battle taking a step, Damian Dunn taking a step, even Zack Hicks being a very competent shooter off the bench, about Jeremiah Williams taking another step, as your lead guard. But if Jake has gotten tougher and he's become a better defender, a better rebounder, and his skills have been honed with the presence of someone like Okpomo, and, you know, Okpomo can come in and score a few points and grab a few rebounds, I think that makes a big difference. Those three guys, and that sounds like I just keep adding on. Like, really, for me, it's about Sage's development, Jake's development, and Okpomo's development. And if they can really make a difference against these bigger, more physical teams like a Houston, like a Cincinnati, and they are as good as they think they can be, then I think that's an X factor for them in getting to the tournament. So,
a last-minute mailbag question from @Kyle Gauss. A wizard comes down, waves his wand, and says, your eyes can only focus on one player during tonight's game. Who are you most looking forward to watching to see how they play in an actual real game? For me, it's Sage Tolbert.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if Sage has like all of a sudden become like a starting guy, and like you've only seen 8 minutes of him when he was completely rusty in the conference tournament, that's the guy I'm going to be most focused on tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Or by the time that you listen to this, listeners, yesterday, Kyle watched a lot of Sage Tolbert.
Dante?
I want to see Jaleel White, man. Everybody's talking him up like that's such like the low-hanging fruit answer, but like everyone's talking him up, players talking him up, coaches talking him up, media's talking him up. Like, I want to see Jaleel White. Like, I'm like legitimately excited just to see what he's about. It seems like a fun player to watch, super energetic on defense. I like those guys because that was the only way I was getting on the court. So I feel that. So
you're the defensive stopper on our team.
Well, no. I said defensive effort, right? There's a difference between being good at defense and being willing to take 4 charges of guys who are significantly bigger than you. So I'm excited to see Jaleel White.
I would say Jaleel's like 1A for me. I agree with Kyle. I would want to see what you get out of Sage Tolbert if he gives them some sort of presence from the get-go, whether that's keeping a possession alive by tapping a ball out, or grabbing an offensive rebound, getting a stop. There were times, again, we didn't get to see a ton of practice. We saw them scrimmage last week when they made practice open for media day. It looks like he can step out and shoot it a little bit. I don't think he's going to be asked to take a ton of threes this season, but if he really gives you something out of the gate as someone who can lock down somebody, or like I said, create some sort of energy at either end of the floor, then I just wondered what that will be like. Because again, I hate saying it, in the past, guys like JP Mormon and Dre Perry were a little limited in that regard. Jake didn't have a ton of help around him. That's not to say that Jake Forrester doesn't need to improve, because he certainly does. But I agree with Kyle. For me, I think those are 2 good answers. I think it's like Jake Forrester, Sage Tolbert 1 and Jaleel White 1A. So Kyle, do you have any more mailbag questions from yourself?
What are you talking about? That was from @KyleGauss. @Kyle_Gauss. I'm at Kyle Gauss.
At Lyle Gauss.
Yeah, that guy's a dick. I have @Lyle Gauss muted on Twitter.
Dante, do you have any alter egos on Twitter?
No, if the Dolphins had been playing well, we would see a little bit more of Hollywood Dante. But
is that the one with the deal with it sunglasses? Is that what I saw?
Yes, that is the aggressively bad Photoshop that you can also buy a shirt of on Blue Chip Scouting Teespring website. Shameless plug. My RCO definitely got me with that, and it like actually made me a couple bucks, so I'll take it. But Hollywood Dante is dead. The Dolphins killed him, so I don't know if we'll be seeing him anytime soon.
I will say that the Dolphins have made my life a lot better, because normally in kind of a throwaway season, I'm debating between do I want the Eagles to win games, or do I want them to lose and get a better draft pick? They could do both now. They can win 7-8 games, develop, and I still got that Dolphins pick to just be a top 5 pick. So it's all going to be great.
Dante, are you a Hootie and the Blowfish fan? Have you been asked this question before?
No, I have not.
Are you serious?
No, no one has ever asked me if I've listened to Hootie and the Blowfish.
When was the last time anybody asked anybody that question? Why would they? 1996?
I'm not a big.
You think Woodstock '99 is going to be a good idea? Nobody's asking that question.
Relax. Let this develop.
Rusted Root?
No. You know I don't like Hootie and the Blowfish.
Do you think Atlantis is going to be able to overtop Jagged Little Pill?
Are you going to let me speak?
I mean, if you're going to find a way to land this plane.
Only Want to Be With You has a famous Dolphins lyric. Are you familiar with it?
I am not. No.
Darius Rucker says, "I'm such a baby because the Dolphins make me cry."
I'm right there with him.
Is he from South Carolina?
Yeah, but somehow I guess he was a Dolphins fan, or he pretended to be a Dolphins fan.
I did know that Darius Rucker was a Dolphins fan. I was aware of that.
Who else is another famous Dolphins fan? I feel like there's one other one.
Famous Dolphins
Josh Gad is a Dolphins fan.
It's not Josh Gad's not.
It's not Josh Gad, but Josh Gad is a Dolphins fan. Daniel Tosh is also
Daniel Tosh, Johnny Depp. They say Dwayne The Rock Johnson. I guess that's just because of Miami, but I don't know. They start getting into
The Rock's from Lehigh Valley.
Kinda. He moved all over the place, and then he went to University of Miami. I'm pretty sure he planted roots there.
Yeah, planted roots. Anyway,
and rocks plant roots.
Took me.
The third article for this is famous Miami Dolphins fans. They do exist, right?
Ouch! Ouch! We've been heard enough already. I don't need.
And then the first photo is this is very much a 22 article, because the first photo is a photo of Ryan Tannehill's wife in a provocative pose. So do better, the Finsider.
Anyway, we're veering off track. Thanks for listening to the pod once again this week. We'll be back next week with a recap of most likely Temple's latest loss, this one to Houston, some Temple hoops, and more mailbag questions. And again, thanks for all the mailbag questions. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next week.